Welcome to episode 6 of Humans Are Whack. If you've been following this series, you already know humans have done some unbelievably strange things. But today, we're diving into a special kind of whack. The kind that makes you question not just why people do what they do, but how they thought it would ever work. Because in this episode, we're talking about the dumbest crimes, the most ridiculous decisions, and the wildest acts of human overconfidence ever caught in real life. So before we get started, tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. It's always amazing to see just how far the Humans Are Whack family reaches across the globe. And if you're new here, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, because the stories you're about to hear will make you laugh, gasp, and maybe even lose faith in common sense for a few minutes. Let's begin. On our first story for today, it's a story that perfectly captures the strange blend of confidence and carelessness that makes humans so endlessly fascinating. A tale of ambition, impulse, and a robbery so absurd it could almost be a comedy sketch. The bank robber who left his ID at the scene. It all started in a quiet Ohio town, an ordinary day at a small neighborhood bank. A man walks in, hood pulled low, sunglasses on, trying to look intimidating. In his hand, a note scrawled in messy handwriting. "Give me all the money. No alarms. No die packs." The teller, terrified but calm, does as instructed. She fills a small bag with cash and slides it over. The man grabs it, nods like he's just completed a business transaction, and rushes out the door. For a brief moment, he feels victorious. Adrenaline pumping, heart racing, money in hand. But as the sirens start to echo in the distance, he realizes something terrible. He's missing his wallet. Back inside the bank, police officers are already examining the counter, and there it is. A brown leather wallet sitting neatly beside the note he used to threaten the teller. Inside, his driver's license, credit cards, a photo of himself, and, for good measure, a library card. Within minutes, the cops have his name, his address, and even his emergency contact. When they show up at his apartment, he's still wearing the same hoodie from the security footage. When asked why he brought his ID to a robbery, he just shrugged and said, "Didn't think I'd need it." And maybe that's the perfect metaphor for human folly. We plan, we plot, we convince ourselves we're being clever, and then one tiny, ordinary mistake unravels it all. Because sometimes the dumbest part about doing something crazy is believing you're smart enough to pull it off. On our second story for today, it's a modern tragedy, one that perfectly shows how far people will go for attention, validation, or a few fleeting moments of online fame. A story of ego, danger, and the strange ways social media can turn reality into spectacle. The influencer who live-streamed his own robbery. It happened in 2019. A young influencer from Brazil, known online for his flashy lifestyle, cars, and motivational posts, decided to stage what he thought would be the ultimate viral stunt. He told his followers he was going to reveal what danger looks like up close. But things went horribly wrong. The plan was simple. He'd hire a few friends to pretend to rob him on livestream, while he acted terrified. It was meant to look real enough to shock his viewers. Then he'd escape, and later reveal it was all fake. Except, the friends he hired weren't actors. They were real criminals. When the live stream began, tens of thousands of viewers tuned in, watching in real time as masked men stormed his car, shouting and demanding his valuables. At first, people thought it was an act, another clickbait setup. But the panic in his voice was too raw, too real. Viewers began commenting, "Is this real? Call the police." The stream cut abruptly after one of the attackers noticed the camera. Hours later, police found the influencer tied up in a warehouse, shaken, humiliated, and robbed of everything, including the phone he used to stream. The video, of course, went viral. Millions watched the moment a man's need for attention turned into genuine danger. Later, in an interview, he said, "I just wanted people to see me as fearless. I never thought it would actually happen." And that's the strange, dark irony of our age. Sometimes, the performance becomes the punishment. Because when the line between content and reality blurs, the consequences can be more real than we ever imagined. On our third story for today, it's one of those tales that makes you question what people are really thinking, or if they're thinking at all. A story that's as disturbing as it is absurd. The couple who tried to sell their baby on Facebook. Yes, you heard that right. In 2013, a young couple from India made headlines worldwide after posting something truly shocking on social media. An ad offering to sell their newborn baby for the equivalent of about $15,000. Their reasoning? They said they needed the money to buy a new smartphone and a motorcycle. It started when the father, desperate for quick cash, was reportedly introduced to a buyer through Facebook Messenger. At first, it seemed like a sick joke, but the man was serious. He even uploaded photos of the infant and wrote that the baby is healthy, serious buyers only. When the transaction went through, the couple celebrated online. Posting selfies with their new phone and captioning it, "Finally got what we wanted." But Facebook users noticed. The post spread quickly, and soon authorities were alerted. The police traced the exchange, arrested the couple, and rescued the baby. In a twisted way, it's a reflection of how the digital world has blurred our moral compass. Where a platform meant for sharing memories and moments became a marketplace for human life. When asked why they did it, the father simply said, "I didn't think anyone would find out." And that might be the scariest part, not the act itself, but the terrifying belief that the internet makes you invisible. Because in a world where people will do anything for likes, money, or validation, sometimes the most whack part of being human is how casually we trade our humanity for convenience. On our fourth story for today, it's the kind of crime that feels ripped straight out of a slapstick comedy, except it really happened. A story of overconfidence, bad decisions, and the kind of logic only the truly whack can justify. The guy who returned stolen goods to the same shop to avoid suspicion. It happened in Portland, Oregon, a small retail store, an ordinary afternoon. Security cameras caught a man stuffing several electronics into his backpack before casually walking out the door. Nothing unusual, shoplifters exist everywhere. But what came next? That's where it gets spectacularly dumb. The next day, the same man walks right back into the same store, carrying the very items he stole. He strolls up to the counter and says, "Hey, I got these as a gift, but I don't need them. Can I get a refund?" The employee, suspicious, scans the barcode. And there it is. The items had never been purchased. She calls the manager, who discreetly calls security. The man, completely unaware, starts making small talk, chatting about how busy the holidays are and how he always shops here. Minutes later, police arrive and ask him to step aside. When they question him, he insists, "I wasn't stealing. I was just returning." The officer replied, "Returning what you never bought." He was promptly arrested, and in his statement, he admitted he thought that returning the items would throw them off. Instead, it did the opposite. It became the easiest arrest that store had ever seen. There's something almost poetic about it. The criminal trying so hard to act normal that he exposes himself even more. Because sometimes, trying to seem innocent is the dumbest move of all. On our fifth story for today, this one sounds like something out of a cartoon. The kind of plan a mischievous kid might dream up after watching too many spy movies. A tale of overconfidence, creativity, and sheer, unbelievable stupidity. The smuggler who hid contraband in an absurdly obvious place, a giant teddy bear. It happened at an airport in Madrid, Spain. A customs officer was conducting routine bag checks when a traveler, a middle-aged man with an oversized suitcase, approached the counter. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until he opened the bag. Inside sat a massive teddy bear, almost the size of a child. Its fur was neat, its button eyes shiny, its expression oddly stiff. The officer smiled at first. "Is this for your daughter?" The man nodded nervously. "Yes, for her birthday. But something felt off. The teddy was unusually heavy, much heavier than it should have been. So the officer lifted it, tapped the belly, and heard a dull thud. Not the soft sound of stuffing. Something solid. They sliced it open. Inside, instead of fluff, they found dozens of small packages, carefully wrapped, tightly sealed, and unmistakably suspicious. It was 3 kilograms of cocaine, hidden in a child's toy. When the officer asked him why he thought this would work, the man replied, "Because everyone loves teddy bears. Nobody suspects them." But that wasn't even the strangest part. Authorities later discovered that he had posted photos of himself at the airport on social media, captioned, "Heading home with a big surprise for my little girl red heart bear face." It didn't take long for investigators to find the pictures, trace his route, and confirm his identity online. He had literally left a breadcrumb trail of evidence, all for a few likes. One officer was quoted saying, "He could have hidden it anywhere, but he chose a teddy bear. It's almost poetic, innocence hiding guilt." And maybe that's the theme here, the belief that the appearance of innocence is enough to cover the truth. But in the real world, no amount of cute plush fur can hide what's inside. Because when you think about it, humans are the only species capable of disguising crime as childhood nostalgia. On our 6th story for today, it's a story of image over reality, of someone who built an entire life out of smoke, mirrors, and hashtags. A tale that reveals just how far humans will go to look successful, even when it's all a lie. The fake millionaire who faked a luxury life and got exposed. Meet Anna Delvey, or at least, that's what she wanted the world to call her. She claimed to be a wealthy German heiress, jetting between New York, Paris, and Ibiza. Her Instagram was a gallery of private jets, designer clothes, rooftop dinners, and 5-star hotels. She mingled with CEOs, influencers, and art dealers, all convinced they were in the presence of a millionaire socialite. But here's the truth. Anna wasn't rich. Not even close. She was living on borrowed money and borrowed trust. She faked wire transfers, used invalid credit cards, and made grand promises about investors and family wealth that didn't exist. For years, she stayed in luxury hotels, promising to pay tomorrow. When bills piled up, she'd simply move on to the next one, leaving a trail of unpaid tabs and bewildered staff behind her. Her scam reached its peak when she convinced a major bank to consider funding her fictional arts foundation, worth millions on paper. But eventually, cracks appeared. Staff started asking questions. Her stories didn't line up. And when the bills came due, her empire of illusion collapsed overnight. She was arrested in 2018, exposed as a con artist who had tricked New York's elite into believing in a fantasy. But here's the wild part. Instead of being shamed, she became famous. People admired her audacity. Netflix made a show about her. She became a celebrity for faking being one. And that's the twisted irony of our world. We reward the illusion almost as much as the achievement. In the end, she told a reporter, "I never said I was rich. People just believed what they wanted to believe." Maybe that's the real con. Not just lying, but understanding how much humans want to believe the lie. Because in the age of filters, fakes, and facades, sometimes pretending is the most profitable business of all. On our 7th story for today, it's not about one person this time, but an entire town. A place where bureaucracy, pride, and poor planning collided in the most hilariously wasteful way possible. A story that shows how even collective decisions can be just as whack as individual ones. The town that built another bridge to nowhere. In 2016, a small town in rural Italy made headlines for constructing a massive concrete bridge, costing nearly €2 million, that connected absolutely nothing to nowhere. The bridge stood tall and proud over an empty valley, beautifully engineered, perfectly symmetrical, but it didn't lead to any road, village, or highway. It simply started in the middle of a hill and ended in a field. When reporters asked the mayor why the town had spent so much on a bridge no one could use, he smiled and said, "It was part of a development plan. The road will come later." The road, of course, never came. Years passed, funding ran out, and the bridge remained a monument to bureaucracy, a giant, silent reminder of how humans can sometimes prioritize paperwork over purpose. But here's where it gets even funnier or sadder, depending on how you see it. In 2021, after public ridicule, the local council voted to restore the bridge, not to finish it, not to make it usable, but to preserve its cultural significance. In other words, they spent more taxpayer money maintaining a bridge that still went nowhere. When asked if they'd ever consider demolishing it, one official said, "It's a symbol of our town's resilience." Resilience to what? Common sense. Some locals nicknamed it the stairway to bureaucracy. Tourists even started visiting it, taking selfies with captions like, "The bridge that leads to my hopes and dreams." In the end, it became a metaphor for how human systems often work. Grand intentions, big budgets, and zero direction. Because sometimes the most expensive projects in the world are also the most pointless. And that's the beauty and tragedy of being human. We'll build monuments to nothing just to prove we can. On our 8th story for today, this one is equal parts genius and madness. The kind of story that makes you wonder where curiosity ends and recklessness begins. It's about a man so obsessed with discovery that he turned his own body into a laboratory. The scientist who tried a dangerous DIY medical experiment on himself. His name was Barry Marshall, an Australian doctor who, in the early 1980s, was determined to prove a theory that the scientific community mocked. At the time, doctors believed that stomach ulcers were caused by stress, spicy food, or genetics. But Marshall and his colleague, Dr. Robin Warren, suspected something else, a bacterium called Helicobacter pylori. Everyone laughed at them. "Bacteria can't survive in stomach acid," they said. "That's impossible." So, Marshall decided to prove them wrong. Not by testing animals, not by long-term observation, but by turning himself into a human experiment. He took a flask of the bacteria and drank it. Within days, he developed severe nausea, vomiting, and pain. His breath started to smell like rotten meat, a telltale sign of infection. An endoscopy confirmed it. His stomach was inflamed, eroded, and filled with ulcers. He had given himself the very disease he was trying to prove existed. After 2 weeks of suffering, he took antibiotics. And just like that, he cured himself. His experiment proved that bacteria, not stress, caused ulcers. It changed modern medicine forever. Years later, he won the Nobel Prize in Medicine. But what most people forget is that, at the time, his experiment could have easily killed him. When asked why he did it, he simply said, "Sometimes, you have to become your own proof." There's something deeply human about that, the urge to push boundaries, even at great personal risk, just to know. Because curiosity can be our greatest gift and our most dangerous addiction. And while Barry Marshall's madness led to a breakthrough, it also reminds us, the line between genius and recklessness is razor thin, and some only find it by crossing it. On our 9th story for today, it's a tale of passion, poor planning, and one of the most spectacular public safety fails in protest history. A reminder that sometimes, good intentions can go horribly, hilariously wrong. The person who attempted a wildly impractical protest stunt that backfired. In 2019, an environmental activist from the United States wanted to make a bold statement about climate change. She believed the world wasn't paying enough attention, so she decided to do something dramatic to wake people up. Her plan? To glue herself to an airplane. Yes, literally. At London's Heathrow Airport, she marched onto the tarmac, holding a banner that read, "Wake up before it's too late." Then, in front of stunned passengers, she pulled out a tube of industrial-strength glue and stuck her hand to the side of a jet. The idea was to stop the flight, attract media attention, and make a statement about emissions. And it worked for about 10 minutes. The glue hardened faster than she expected, and she began screaming in pain. Security had to call emergency responders to unstick her hand without tearing her skin. The plane was delayed, the passengers furious, and the entire protest ended up being broadcast worldwide, but not for the reason she hoped. The headlines didn't say activist raises awareness. They said, protester glues herself to plane, delays flight, achieves nothing. When interviewed later, she admitted, I didn't think about how strong the glue would be. Authorities fined her for disrupting airport operations, and ironically, the rescue vehicles and delays caused more CO2 emissions than the flight itself. Her message may have been important, but her method became a meme. And that's the thing about human activism. Passion can be powerful, but without reason, it turns into chaos. Because sometimes, the louder we try to make a point, the less people actually hear it. On our 10th and final story for today, it's one that could only exist in the age of the internet. A world where a single moment can make you famous, infamous, or a laughingstock overnight. A story of pride, regret, and the cruel permanence of digital memory. The man who sued because a viral video ruined his life and lost spectacularly. It all started on an ordinary Tuesday at a drive-thru. A man, mid-40s, neatly dressed, respectable job, family man, pulled up to grab lunch. The cashier made a small mistake with his order, forgot the extra sauce. That tiny, trivial error triggered something explosive. He snapped. The footage shows him leaning out of the car window, red-faced and shouting, "Do you even know how to do your job? I pay taxes for people like you to mess up my food." He ranted for nearly 3 minutes. Loud, bitter, condescending. What he didn't realize was that a teenager in the car behind him was recording the entire meltdown on their phone. By that evening, the video was on YouTube, titled, "Angriest Drive-Thru Customer Ever" in SFW language. By morning, it had 500,000 views. By the end of the week, it had crossed 5 million. The internet tore him apart. He became a meme overnight, his face plastered on reaction images, his quotes remixed into TikTok audios, his voice used in parody animations. He was instantly recognizable, to coworkers, to neighbors, even to strangers in public. People whispered when he entered restaurants. Some laughed, some filmed him again. Then came the real-world consequences. His employer, a corporate firm that prided itself on professionalism, called him in. The HR representative slid her phone across the table. On it was the video. He didn't deny it. He just sat there, silent, humiliated. Within days, he was fired. His LinkedIn profile was flooded with mocking comments. His wife deactivated her social media. His kids were bullied at school. And when he made what he thought was a smart move, he decided to sue. He filed a lawsuit against the teen who filmed him, the platform that hosted the video, and even a few media outlets that had shared it. His claims? Emotional distress, defamation, violation of privacy. In court, he said, "That video destroyed my life. It should never have been made public. I deserve justice." But the law saw it differently. The judge ruled that he had no reasonable expectation of privacy in a public setting. No one had edited or altered the footage. It showed him as he truly behaved. And most importantly, the court stated, the harm was not caused by the publication, but by the plaintiff's own conduct. In other words, the internet didn't ruin him. He did. He lost the case, but that wasn't the end. The court documents became public record, and the story went viral again. Headlines read, "Man who went viral for meltdown sues and loses again." Comment sections filled with the same merciless jokes. His name became a punchline for his own downfall. Eventually, he vanished from the internet completely, deleted his accounts, moved to another city, changed jobs. But every few months, the video would resurface, re-uploaded by some random user, reigniting the laughter. That's the thing about the digital age. It has no mercy, and no expiration date. You can apologize. You can rebuild. But once the world decides your story is entertainment, you stop being a person and become content. And maybe that's the darkest part of all, that in trying to erase the past, he only engraved it deeper. Because on the internet, there's no delete button for regret. Before we wrap up today's episode of Humans Are Whack, let's take a second to breathe. Because wow, today's stories were a ride. From people trying to live on sunlight, to someone suing the internet for his own meltdown, humanity never fails to surprise us. And that's exactly why we're here, to explore the wild, weird, and sometimes downright unbelievable things humans do in the name of pride, curiosity, or pure foolishness. So now we want to hear from you. Which of today's stories blew your mind the most? Which one made you stop and think, yeah, humans are truly whack? Drop your answers in the comments below. We love seeing which stories fascinate you the most. And before you go, tell us where you're watching from and what time it is in your country right now. It's always amazing to see how far the Humans Are Whack family reaches around the world. If you're new here, welcome. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because the next episode is going to get even crazier. We're diving deeper into the bizarre, the brilliant, and the utterly ridiculous things humans do, from dumbest crimes to shocking experiments that went way too far. Because one thing's for sure, humans will never run out of ways to shock the universe. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, humans are whack.